Joey Kaufman from the Orange County Register, at Joey R. Kaufman on Twitter, a must follow for USC content. And Joey was out on the practice field today. Well, what were your sort of initial takeaways from day one? A day where they weren't in pads before everyone panics. They're not allowed to be in pads, acclimatization period or whatever they call it. But day one of practice.
Yeah, day one of practice in spring football, I feel like is kind of a slow time.
Yeah.
They're working their way in their pads. There's not too much to be revealing. A couple things stood out. They had officials here for day one. That's a little different. You don't usually see that until they start scrimmaging. I think probably from the media contingent, a lot of people were curious to see Graham Harrell coach the team at practice. He's a new face. How is he going to interact with players? Is he going to stand over their shoulder? Or is he going to stand during certain points? He actually watched kind of the second half of practice from Dato Field, kind of in a perch spot. And
with the headset on.
Yeah, he was calling it like he was an OC during a game, and it was unscripted. So those were a couple little nuggets. It's hard to you don't want to overstate things or say things were particularly revealing in day one.
I need you to tell us exactly what's going to happen in the season now that you've seen one spring practice.
Right, I'm selling this hard, but I don't want to lead anybody astray.
Well, I think people should definitely read your article today, OCRegister.com, about Graham Harrell. I'm sure you tweeted it out. A really lengthy piece, his coaching history and sort of his mentors. What would have been your first impressions of USC's new offense coordinator?
Well, I appreciate the plug.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, let's get some readership out there.
It's good to get people to read the newspapers still. The two takeaways, and then kind of the article talks about it, is he's very much his father's son. He's the son of Sam Harrell, who's a high school coaching legend in Ennis, Texas. And in the late 90s, Sam Harrell was running a team in Ennis, and they weren't a big, powerful team. And so they went to the spread kind of early on, and they were a team that preached simplicity. We're not going to have a giant playbook.
Yeah.
So Graham ended up being a quarterback for his dad at Ennis and kind of picked that up from him. And then that message kind of got doubled down when he ended up going to Texas Tech and playing for Leach. And Leach is a guy who doesn't really have physical playbooks. He's not running a ton of plays. They're going to run a couple plays, and they're going to be really good at it. So he really learned from those two guys. I mentioned in the piece he's very much his father's son, and he's very much a Mike Leach disciple in kind of some of his off-topic nature, but very much in kind of philosophy as well.
Yeah, and I mentioned Michael Pittman Jr. was on here before you that, just being around these air raid guys, there is an air of confidence about them. We spent a month with Cliff Kingsbury, maybe not as long as people wanted, but then you bring in Graham Harrell, who sort of reminds me a lot of Kingsbury maybe 6 years ago, like Kingsbury when he was at A&M coaching Johnny Manziel. And it does feel a little bit like they have a secret sauce. It's not that they're cocky because it's not about them, but they do seem to have a lot of belief in this system.
They seem to know very much what they're trying to do,
yes.
which a lot of times with football coaches, you ask what scheme are you running, what system are you running, and it feels like they're trying to do everything.
Right.
They're going to be a physical team. They're going to throw the ball a lot.
Right.
They're going to. And you can't do all that. You're only going to maybe get 70 plays a game. You're not getting 130.
Right.
So with these guys, it seems like they very much have a plan. There's an identity, and I think that's something that's going to help this team because you look at them over the past couple of years, at times it felt like, I remember early in Clay Helton's tenure, he talked about how they wanted to be kind of Stanford-like. And well, Stanford-like is a very particular formula. And then you have Darnold, and they became more spread-like. And it seemed like it could change pretty frequently on the personnel and the quarterback. And with Graham Harrell, it seems to give them very much a clear identity.
Yeah, it does, and one thing that you talked about is the simplicity. You talked to people at North Texas, and they were sort of like waiting for their playbook that never came, and just sort of trying to ask Coach Helton about that tonight. There's sort of no mention of a playbook. It does. You get a sense of what simplicity means. I mean, is it 7 plays? I mean, I know they used to say about Mike Leach. They say about him that all his plays are on one note card. I mean, is that what we're talking about here?
The way it was explained to me is at one point one of the North Texas quarterbacks asked, Coach, are we going to get a playbook? He said, no, we don't do playbooks. So I'll write it on the board. You can write it down if you want. But eventually you can know it like the back of your hand.
It's just everything's memorized because there's just...
Well, for Graham it's memorized, but he wants as the other quarterbacks in North Texas, they would write stuff down. Eventually you kind of build your own little notebook. But it's not a huge playbook. It's not like you're picking up the New York Yellow Pages or anything like that. And that's the case with a lot of the air raid guys. Art Briles and Kendall Briles, they didn't have a big physical playbook. Dino Babers at Syracuse. So the guys who have come from that coaching tree don't have a big playbook, and it's just going to be a little simpler.
Yeah, well, it definitely sort of changes the way we look at spring, because instead of every answer being, well, we're focused on learning the playbook, it just sounds more like they're going to go play a little bit. And then the question is, what's Graham Harrell looking for? Because he opens up the quarterback competition. You have JT Daniels, who I think it's fair to say is the incumbent. He was the starter when healthy last year. Jack Sears got a start. Matt Fink got some time. What do you see from this quarterback battle? How open is it? And you get a sense of what Harrell's looking for.
I think we'll get a better sense in scrimmages, because if you look at the way a lot of the quarterback competitions under Clay Helton have been decided, scrimmages played a big role.
Yeah.
JT Daniels really popped in that first scrimmage last year when he threw 4 or 5 touchdown passes and threw the ball all over the Coliseum field. And it felt like the QB competition was shut down after the first week, basically.
Yep.
And even if you go back to the Max Brown, Sam Darnold competition, Max Brown played pretty well in scrimmages, and that, I think, gave him confidence and the coaching staff confidence to start him from day one, no matter how you feel about that decision in retrospect. But at the time in the scrimmages, that mattered. So I'll be curious to see how they allocate reps in the scrimmages and who's running with the first team in the scrimmages, how the players perform in the scrimmages when you get live bullets, so to speak, going.
Outside of Harrell and the quarterbacks and the sort of offensive system change, what's your biggest storyline this spring to watch?
I think secondaries, they just lose so much. You have 3 starting cornerbacks who are seniors, and Biggie Marshall, Jenny Harris at the nickel, Isaiah Langley, and Elijah Griffin, who could be kind of a starter there. He's going to likely miss most of spring because he's coming off a shoulder injury. So they just need to be able to find bodies. Some of these true freshmen who have come in early, like Britton Allen, those guys are going to get a lot of time. And then at the safety spot, and I think the development of some of the younger players will be important. And they just need to find bodies, maybe even walk-ons or people who can just help out second string in practice.
Well, I think what's nice, at least from my perspective, I don't know, but from yours, it's kind of nice to have a little bit of football to talk about again. I mean, it has been a long 3 months, and it feels like this program just sort of needs to get back on the football field.
It's been a long offseason, a lot of personnel moves, so it'll be interesting to write about the progression of players in between the lines. And I think for the program, it's just a welcome distraction, because it's such a long offseason when you don't play in a bowl game. For the seasons where they're in the Rose Bowl or the Cotton Bowl, their season's done on New Year's December 30th.
6 weeks instead of 12 weeks.
Right, and so you basically ended your season Thanksgiving weekend, and you're not playing until daylight savings time
1st, or August
Sunday.
30th,
So it's a long time for them to just kind of sit around. Yes, you're doing winter conditioning stuff, but especially when you have a season like that, I think you want to have something tangible. Maybe somebody has a good scrimmage, just things to feel good about and things to build off.
Joey Kaufman will have it all covered. Orange County Register and at Joey R. Kaufman. Thank you, as always, for joining us.